You have the AI on as well.
I think so. I think it
Shut around and stuff.
Yeah, so-
And like the main part is strong.
But that's only if other people have.
That's terrible.
So if I'm the one that clicks record, then it assumes I'm okay with it. If it's everybody else.
And so he wanted
you comfortable being recorded. So that's
So we'll be interested in that video and taking it from you.
okay. I could do that.
Okay.
The only question that I have is where the heck is my presentation? Because I just shared it with myself and I don't see it coming up. So give me this one. second.
Yeah. It's pretty similar to the health
I
application.
was gonna say you saw it, but so there's.
Yeah.
Changes,
But
but
not
nothing
this-
crazy.
Yeah, but now it's something that's good.
No, I get it. I get it. I get it.
Right.
See you. Have fun.
Thanks. See ya.
Your review of Dune 2 inspired me to watch the movie.
What's that?
Your review of Dune 2 inspired me to watch the movie.
Oh dear, you watched it already? It's dark, man.
It's
It's super dark.
Yeah, I don't.
Did I enjoy it? Yes. Was it an amazing, phenomenal movie? Yes. Can I recommend it? No.
Yeah, that's
Definitely.
pretty much, yeah, I really liked it, but yeah.
I loved it. Super dark. I mean, the movie is, or the book is super dark, so it's not like
Yeah.
to fake it, right? Like, and I think that was true to the book. It's funny because I feel like everybody else is like, they're like super haters. And if they're not super haters, then they're like, it was the best movie I've ever seen. And I'm like, it's good.
I started to
I
look
liked
with the
it.
Kindle sample right now, and then it's been checked out the library for a while now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So I really like books. I'd be super amazing. Sure, although I also really like, I guess it's like, there's the unavailability of this.
Is there a brother for Gene?
Like,
There is, I'm gonna see if it's
gotta
worth
check the instructions, the hero tropes, like. That's one of the points of the book, is basically say we did have like.
Yeah.
This shows one save.
Looks like it's working great.
It wouldn't be there.
Right.
It wouldn't be like happily after, like.
Is that the clearest, I think?
Yeah.
The control of people exercise the power, it's like it's.
I don't want it.
That was my choice.
Okay. I really.
Definitely a relationship side.
My wife's not into that kind of stuff. She doesn't like dark stuff at all. So really. So I just went by myself. Other guys were You haven't watched it though.
It's 3 hours and then we get popcorn. Also, let me tell you all about.
I told my dad that happened. He watched it.
It's really good, but just a very. It's a dark film. So, I'm not sure that's the reason. I want people to know that they're expecting something else.
The hard part's the end of the like, I think was different from what I heard the book was about. And in my old movie, they changed it. I don't know if I like that, but probably sort of.
Familiar face.
It's not like you were the master of skepticism.
Oh, this is my, you know, this is very much up my. I'm sorry. It is true. Are you getting responses on that?
Yeah.
Because I have it pulled up on mine too, but do you want to ask me things or do you want me to just look through them and go?
You decide.
Yeah, there's so much. There's like whole other stories in the book that are never. So there's a lot of detail.
I like that picture. It's like 2 years old.
Not so much like having anything to do with them, but it talks a lot about politics that go on with the other houses, why the debates have to be able to have money with this.
I feel like it's an interesting thing, but if we watch Star Wars episode 1 and the entire time, you're like, why are you talking about politics? I want to see Jedi lightsabers. And then you watch Dune and you're like, can you just go a little bit deeper in the spaces you'll please? Right, like, I really want to know how the economics of this universe works. Which is like a little bit unusual, but that's where I am.
I thought Brother Thane's opinion was really interesting. He said he was kind of come to hate the movie because it took all of the world building. And so now he's stuck face to face without the story, and he doesn't like the
He
story.
said the same thing. I found that really insightful. So his take to me was, because the whole point of the movie is plot, and you don't really care about all the background things, you have to stare face to face with the fact that the plot is actually not that great. And it's not that the plot is poorly written, it's like, it's not super inspirational, it doesn't do others don't do much. I thought that was a really interesting observation. I should listen to it. And so I can't say about that. So far, we only have that one. And it's
Pretty practice.
oh, okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. If I don't hit that one, then I'm worried. So, anyway, so we'll see.
Of moving, my channel is gonna need the market. Mine is because yeah. But I'm such a speech to it.
Oh, okay.
If I can.
I didn't see.
Oh, okay, yeah, like you're early and like zooming in, but it's not like it's
Right, so I
totally.
Are you excited?
I mean, I woke up at 2 in the morning because my son, and it's one of those things, which is like.
We have some.
Yeah, like I don't think. That's what you're asking. But it's very flexible. It's also nice because I think I know 80% of the people go with that. So it's good to see very like people are coming here.
It's like, oh, yeah, you know, they're human beings.
Is,
They
are. Other than
And
that.
they don't have to be excited.
I've also like say.
Okay,
But if you have lots of questions,
I-
pause, I'll say it like this. Is there a way that we can hold it? That door? Let me just see if there's a door style.
Yeah. Yeah, we have a couple minutes.
I'm just gonna ask for 2 quick helps. We're gonna get started about a minute and a half, let everybody get up here. There's a QR code in like 80% of the slides. I tried to put them in all of them and then I forgot a couple. But they're also spread out around the room. That's for comments, questions, and I've left some time to the side. So if you have questions about whatever I'm presenting, if you want more data, if you want to discuss something, argue. By the way, my style is that I really like strong argumentation, so I'm not going to be upset if you ask something really pointed. That's actually really fun for me. But go ahead and grab one of these QR codes at any point, stick it in there, and whatever time we have left at the end, that's what we use for the Q&A. If you don't put anything in there, then I'll just assume you just want to hear me rant more, and I'll just keep going, and that's fine too. Also, the second note is several of you, not all of you, some of you know the jokes that I'm going to tell. You can't give them away, okay? So if you see one of my favorite tricks coming, please don't follow that for everybody else. Let them fall into the trap. It's more fun that way. And then we'll go from there. That's all I got.
Perfect. I know, I'm fine.
I heard the actor put all of the Butler, that he did do method acting. Really? Because usually does method acting, but he like, he's like your. He's either very happy, yeah, doing it kind of stuff. But he still did a phenomenal job.
All right, welcome to the lecture today, the William James Lecture. We appreciate you being here. We hope it's going to be a intellectually stimulating conversation that you will have through questions and comments. We're happy to have Ben Patini with us. Maybe you'll introduce yourself a little bit, so people know the background. But we're very happy to have him for an hour. And so we can do lots of people want, I think, for an hour, so let's do that. Please use the QR codes throughout the conversation as you want to. Depending on the amount, then we'll actually delegate how we will engage with your comments and questions. So that. Again, thank you for being here. Appreciate you. Let's give him a warm welcome. Right, we will continue with volunteer for a prayer, and then we will continue with today's topic. Do we have someone who would be willing to pray for us? Thank you.
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank thee for this opportunity that we have to come here and to learn and to stretch our minds and our understandings. We ask that we can all have open minds and open spirits, that we can learn what you would have us to learn. We thank thee, we say this in the name of thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
I want to start off with a question. I asked a psychology class yesterday and got phenomenal results. So I'm going to ask you the same thing. I want you really quickly to just pop off the first thing that pops into your head, some attributes of Jesus Christ. So just say the words as they pop in your head. Some character strengths, character traits of Jesus Christ. Go.
Wise.
Wise. Good. What else?
Kind.
Kind. What else?
Direct.
Caring. What else?
Resolute.
Resolute. Good. What else?
Inclusive.
What was it?
Inclusive.
Inclusive. What else?
Confident.
Confident. Good. What else?
Consistent.
Now let's talk about teachers. And specifically, I want you to think about in your mind the elementary education teachers and who they are going to be when they're in the classroom. So if you're trying to identify, this is actually the topic of my dissertation, if you're trying to identify phenomenal teachers in the classroom based on their personality strengths, who might you select for? By the way, the one that I'm going to use is the Big Five personality model. There's lots on personality psychology that I won't go into here. You can use something else, but what do you think are the personality traits that predict a really effective teacher? Go ahead and shout those out now.
Patient.
Patient. What else? Don't give away the jokes, Margot. Sorry, go ahead. Conscientious. That is one of the big five. Good. What else? Kind. As it turns out, I think you all are following the script. And every time I show this picture, people go, oh, he's loving and kind and passionate. Stuff like this. He's the same man who was arguing with the rabbis in the temple at 12. He's the same man who overturned the temple or overturned the tables in the temple. Let's go to one that I can speak to a little bit more, and that's this one. As it turns out, Mark is actually right. There is a number, there's a good amount of evidence that the unexpected personality trait that best predicts good teaching is being disagreeable. I think we tend to follow a little bit of a cultural script on some of these things. And part of my purpose today is to unlock some of this. My goal is to convince you that skepticism is a Christ-like attribute. I think Jesus was skeptic. I think he asked his disciples and his apostles to be too. And I think that that's a case worth making. Now, I know the psychology evidence on this. If I want to feel like I'm convincing you, I put up statistics and graphs. But if I actually want to convince you and persuade you, I use heroes and stories. So I'm going to use some heroes and stories. William James. I really like William James. This is the William James lecture. I did not know much about him until I was preparing for this, and I decided I should probably know a little bit about William James. The more I found, the more I wanted to read about William James. William James was a famous lecturer and thinker. He was a legend. According to legend, he was the first person to ever institute student evaluations. because he thought that maybe, just maybe, his students might have something to offer on the quality of the courses he was teaching. Okay. He was a pragmatist, empiricist, anti-positivist. Anyway, we can get into all those fancy labels. Really, really interesting the way that he thought. I love what one author said about him. He did not try to be interdisciplinary. He simply didn't know how else to think. He didn't see the world in terms of psychology and science on the other side. He just saw it all kind of blending together. That resonated with me. He was a big fan of free will. He said, as my first act of free will, I will choose to believe in free will. That probably irritated all of the determinists of his time. But the one that I want to focus on today is this last one. Psychology, he was asked to give a lecture on the topic of what makes great teachers. And so he said, well, I have bad news for you. Psychology can't teach you how to be a great teacher. We don't have that set of skills. But I think it can tell you a few things you definitely should not do. I think William James is a great example of a hero of skepticism. But I think we can do even better. Tend to think about the heroes for what they believe. Today, I want to flip that and ask, who are the heroes that we've set up because they chose not to believe? Here's number 2. And perhaps the most important of all, here is number 3. It occurred to me the other day, by the way, we don't know how it works. I'm going to give you my own private theory. I think it's possible that the Savior had an angel appear at 5 and just kind of give him all the information in the whole world. So he knew everything. Doesn't quite resonate with me. I'm a teacher, and I suspect he was asked to figure some of this out on his own. I wonder if he was in the temple arguing with the rabbis at 12 years old because he was trying to figure things out. And when he heard something that didn't match, didn't resonate, didn't feel quite right, he said, no, there's something about that that doesn't work. And that's why he was arguing in the temple. Because he was not just going to go along with the theories of the day, he was going to figure it out for himself. That's the kind of person I suspect he was. Okay. You all unfortunately know some things that are not true. This is what I call shock and awe. This is where I do all my party tricks all at once within about 10 minutes to kind of knock your socks off. And as I do this, as soon as you are convinced, then just please do me a favor and say uncle. Okay. By the way, if any of you don't know, when Joseph Smith was doing the stick pull, when somebody had definitely been beat, they would say uncle so that they didn't get completely flopped by the prophet right over the head, right? When you want to tap out, you say, okay, uncle. Okay, so here we go. Number 1, do you understand that there are some practical implications of skepticism? I laugh because I saw somebody in my head like trying to do this, right? Okay, let's do another one. Let's play a little game. Give, said the little.
Street.
Give, oh give, said the little.
Street.
As it hurried down the hill. I'm small, I know, but wherever I go, the fields. It's not grass. It's fields. Sorry. In fact, there's a whole report on this by somebody named Peggy Worthen, who I'm fairly certain is the wife of former President Kevin Worthen of the university at BYU. And she writes about this whole thing and goes, I have no idea why it is that we all sing the wrong words. The author doesn't know either. She actually likes the words we sing better, so she sings them too. And but by the way, when I say this, sometimes people go, no, you're wrong. Trust me. I think they just updated it in the book. So I've actually had to go through with people all of the different versions of the children's hymn book and be like, no, it was never, ever grass. It was always fields. You know things that are not true. Keep going. These ones are fun. I mean, they're party tricks, right? They're a little lame, but they're super fun. Okay, do you see why this one's cool? Maybe let me try the next slide and it'll help a little bit. Now, do you see it? Maybe if I flip back and forth, you'll see it even clearer. Now, don't get too excited. There's this thing in education called the engagement trap. It's where you're so excited by the activity, you forget to learn. Sometimes teachers fall into this thing of being so engaging that the students aren't actually learning, they're just engaged. Engagement isn't the goal. I actually want you to learn something from this. And what I want you to take away is, I can't unsee it. I know it's wrong. I know that this part is the same color all the way across. But I can't unsee it. I am not wired to see it correctly. I consistently see it wrong every single time. That to me is intriguing. That to me suggests that we need to do something about the fact that we are not wired toward truth. Let's do another one. This one melts my brain every time. This is the dress. You've seen it before. But I love that they actually copy and paste it. So you tell me, is it blue and black, or is it white and yellow? What color is it, guys? Can I tell you my answer? Right now it's blue and black, and right now it's golden yellow, right? And it just like switches as I go back and forth. Is it melting your mind a little bit? Are you ready to cry uncle, or shall I keep going? I have 78 slides. I'm prepared. Like I can keep this all day. Okay, let's do another one. Which one's right? Which one's right?
No tail.
No tail.
Which one's right? My son this morning, who has inherited his father's sense of know-it-allness, looked at me and said, "It's definitely the one on the left." And I had to bring up pictures of Star Wars and show him that C-3PO has in fact always had a silver leg. That it is the Berenstain that bears. Curious George has no tail, has never had a tail, and in case you want a few more examples, Fruit of the Loom does not include a cornucopia.
Uncle.
Uncle, okay, good. That's what I'm. Do we have more, or is it just him? Okay, we'll keep going then. This one makes people mad. So I just from the get-go, I love all of you. Okay, it's okay. How many of you are INTJs? ENFPs? How many of you know what I'm talking about? Aha! There's a little problem with the psychology of personality, and that is that it's all bogus, friends. Like it's all just made up to sell personality tests. And it's really, really good at doing one thing, and that is selling personality tests. By the way, if this is a deep and meaningful part of your life and existence, come to my Ed 304 class where I will explain to you that that's okay. And we can talk through this. I think it's wish.com patriarchal blessings, but like we can figure this out. Okay? Like it's okay. You are trying to find some sense of self-concept, some sense of meaning, what drives you, what you're passionate about. I'm not saying that taking them is a bad idea. You can learn about yourself. I am just saying that there's no basis in scientific fact for saying, nope, I'm an INTJ. Sorry, that's who I am. I don't care. By the way, how did you learn who you were? You took a survey about you. It's like somebody saying, I took a survey on me and I took it. I wrote the answers and I think it was right. And yet we love these things. Let's do another one. Have you guys heard of the color code?
Yes.
The Enneagram? Guys, it's astrology for business majors. It's totally bogus. I actually really like the 5-factor model. We can talk about the 5-factor model. Everybody in psychology, by the way, this is where I make my psychology friends mad. The 5-factor model is way better. No, the 5-factor model is better in like 2 very small ways. And in every other way, it falls into the same pits. These things are not genetic. If you have a 5-factor score on your personality, that does not mean that was who you were born as. That does not mean you cannot change. There's no evidence for any of that. It's a better model. I like it more. It's been studied. That doesn't mean that it's scientifically valid. This one gets people upset. I'm sorry. Oh no, I heard somebody groan in the front. They're like, oh, right? Again, I will say the same thing. If you're a gift giver, look, I'll be blunt. My wife's love language when we were first dating was going on dates. Today, it's washing of dishes. And I think that's fine. She's not, you know, it's not a bait and switch. That's called a relationship where things change and you have to learn the other person and like serve them and like communicate. By the way, I recommend everybody reads the book or has the conversation. That's great. You'll learn about the other person. That's wonderful. But as soon as you say, no, I'm a words of affirmation person, you're wrong. I'm sorry. It's just not real. You might as well say, no, I'm sorry. I'm a Slytherin person. I just, you know, I cheat on tests. That's how I am. Right?
Uncle.
Oh, thank you. That's nice. This is the one that's super trippy. It's really complicated though, because I can't show it to all of you quickly. This is the blind spot. Have any of you ever found your blind spot before? Okay, if you haven't, come by my office and I will go through it slowly with you. It takes between like 2 minutes if you're really quick, and some people it takes 20, 25. Everybody has a blind spot because there's a part of your eye where you can't see because there's nerves back here. And so what I do is I cover up one eye and I go out here and I can no longer see my eye. Or sorry, I couldn't before. I can no longer see my thumb wiggle. And it's the trippiest feeling in the world because you've never even noticed that your blind spot was there. It's the coolest thing. You teach this to a 6th grader who's going to show all of his friends for 3 months. You're going to be the coolest person he's ever met. Okay. We could do this one, but I can't because some of my 3 or 4 students are here and it's next week's lesson, so I'm not going to give it away yet. How many of you heard that all triangles add up to 180 degrees? Do we have any engineers in the room? Is it true that all triangles add up to 180 degrees? Do you have an example of otherwise? Can we break their heads a little bit?
It's on a globe or something.
Thank you. That right there is a triangle. That is a triangle with 3 90-degree angles. You start at the equator, you turn a hard right, you go to the North Pole, you turn a hard right, you go back down to the equator. 3 90-degree angles. What you learned in geometry in 9th grade or 10th grade was Euclidean geometry on a flat space. And when I say you can build a triangle with 3 90-degree angles, people's heads explode. Because nobody knows what Euclidean means, because we don't teach that in 9th grade. Right? Uncle, anyone? Okay, we'll keep going. So I really do like this one. Let's do prisen collinensen and Kules instead. I want to ask you a question as we start. I want you to listen very carefully and see if you can figure out what language he is singing in. Him and the kids in the room. And we'll see how we do.
Freezing cold in 9 years old.
You the cold maze, say one freezing cold in 9 years old. All right.
When I stay in the shoes now, and whole building scene in a whole red map begin to call the boss time. Chickens and behind me get a cold, baby, stay yet, Bill Joe. When I stay in the shoes now, and whole building scene in a whole red map begin to call the boss time.
Now, at this point, if you're smart, you're analyzing his name. And I will tell you right off the bat, he is in fact Italian. That is in fact how I know him, because I have some Italian history and lineage. And no, he's not speaking in Italian. That is not what Italian sounds like. I'll give you 30 more seconds. You're welcome, by the way, during this part of the talk, to whisper to your friends and go, what is he speaking? That is completely fine.
Well, it's the same as you call me Steen. You never saw another just got play with this jam. You the coming not choose not right, but not so hope this again, not the proper no time. Oh, but if it's a stand, light the shoes go, my man. You would trust to the match called to raid the girls.
The whole song is great, by the way. I love this. Adriano Celentano is kind of an evil genius. Go ahead and shout out guesses that you have if you feel like it's a decent guess.
I think he's
English.
scatting, gibberish.
Okay, scatting. Okay, good. English, somebody said what? Medical words. Do I like that? Adriano Celentano had a theory. His theory was that Italian youth in the 70s would buy anything if it sounded remotely American. So he wrote a gibberish song that sounded like American English, got a bunch of folks that look like students to dance at the same time like Americans would, and sold a bunch of albums like hotcakes because the Italians bought them up. Good thing we don't do that. Hold up on the side. My point with this one is a little bit particular. All of the themes of all the examples I've given you is that skepticism has practical effects, that it is useful, but I want to transition into something a little bit deeper, and that is that it's actually the moral take, that it is morally right, that it is actually a Christ-like virtue, and I mean that very seriously, right? Because what Adriano Celentano was doing was just trying to be funny, trying to, you know, prove a point, basically. But I need you to pause for a second and notice that what's happened here is he has refined gibberish to an art. We didn't need to wait 50 more years for social media. The noise had already arrived. By the way, I think we have time because I'm trying to be careful. I won't show you the whole song, but I love Mariana's Trench Pop 101. Pop song, mocking a pop song in the form of a pop song. Oh.
Pop music 101, some simple instructions for a good first impression. Now let's start with a first one. A minor chord tensions grow, fade in the bass like so. Now with momentum, go stop and bring the beat back. It's called for on the floor, a beat you can't ignore. I bring sexy back once more. Love that for show. The chords are 1, 4, 6, 4. Now I'm talking familiar. Harmony in thirds, not fourths. We'll take you into the pre-chorus. Real quick now, don't you bore us. Hurry up and get to the chorus. Them down, they won't ignore us. Get to the floor and hear some words you should know. Like DJ, never let me go. Or shots and then we'll lose control. Or baby, 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 baby. How about one more last word like, hey girl, we've only got tonight. Some things just go together like higher desire and fire, higher desire and fire.
That's a genius. This is absolute genius. They're critiquing how easy it is to write a really, really super catchy pop song in the style of a pop song. It's glorious. Absolute genius. Isn't that fantastic?
Yes.
The whole thing is quite
I
good.
would like legitimately listen to that.
Oh, no, it's super catchy. I mean, by the way, the whole point is I would go when I was a 13-year-old living in Italy to a discoteca, and I would listen to songs that I could not understand. And in the middle of it, I'd be like, what is this song about? My Italian friends would be like, I don't know. And then come back to the United States and Americans were dancing to songs and be like, what is this about? Like, I don't know. It's really, really deep to me. So I hope I convinced you that you know a bunch of stuff you don't realize. You know a bunch of stuff that's not true. You're not even particularly wired for truth. That skepticism has some practical benefit. For the next few minutes, I want to convince you that like the 21st century skill is going to be skepticism. And I think I can prove that point to you very quickly with 3 words. The first 2 are social media, and the other one isn't a word, it's an abbreviation, but it's AI. Your capacity to tell the difference between truth and error, between real and fake, authentic and inauthentic, is going to be what sets you apart from the crowd in terms of employment, in terms of morality, in terms of being like a decent citizen. This is the new skill that everyone needs to have. I tend to find that professors like me are focused on my students might be using AI. I am focused on I need to get my students ready to ensure that their students are using AI in good ways, because I'm teaching future teachers. That's a very different ballgame from I want to catch you when you're using it when you're not supposed to. Let me give you a more practical application. Does anybody know what Irlen syndrome is? Give it a shot. Sister Castillo, can you tell us about Irlen's syndrome?
Highly controversial.
Oh, thank you for saying that.
I think in 2021 or 2022, the American Association for whoever who looks, who studies your eyes says, no.
So as it turns out, this was a huge deal for a little while. You can still go to a bunch of different places and find organizations selling these glasses to help kids who have a reading disability. Typically, we call it dyslexia. This is supposedly, and I actually saw this in one of their articles, it was very frustrating to me. They called it a dyslexia spectrum disorder. And they said, don't worry, we have the cure, just buy these glasses. Well, I have good news. I found a meta-analysis. It's right here. We know now what Irlen lenses will do for your child, and that is they will make them look like Bono. That is the extent to which I can say anything about what Irlen lenses will do. And by the way, one of my conjectures is that education in particular has a problem listening to evidence. I think I have good reason for that. And if you want to talk sometime, let's chat. Education as a field is worse at looking at the research than most of the fields I know. Maybe that's just because I'm a snooty wannabe economist, right? And economists are really, really hard about empirical data. Let's do another one. When I tell my students, I am going to give you a proposition, or two propositions, one's true and one's false, their minds go into high gear. When I give them a slide filled with a bunch of stuff that is true, they just copy down the notes. And their brain is entirely engaged on one question. And that is, did I get all the notes down so I can worry about it later? I think it's actually really fun to include some falsehood in my slides. And you're probably thinking, that sounds like an off like it is. So let me clarify how I do it. Okay. The way I do it is with something called a debate. And as it turns out, debates are really, really fun. They're super engaging, and they make kids do this thing that we always call critical thinking in a real way. Bring whatever information you have, whatever evidence you have. Let's talk through it. By the way, I am going to participate, but I'm also going to referee. It's not super fair. I'm also going to win. Okay? Because some debates are real true debates and there's no right answer. And some debates there is actually an answer. And we need to be able to say that. So pedagogically, for any of my friends in the room who are thinking about ever doing teaching or might be faculty, I want to push you to just think about this. Here's one of my favorites. Here's one of my favorites. Raise your hand if you are a visual learner. Raise your hand if you are an auditory learner. You learn best by listening, lectures, those kinds of things. Kinesthetic learners. Raise your hands, please. Good, you're skeptical. None of you are raising your hands. A student came to my office. It was really sweet. She dropped something on the floor and said, oh, crap. And then for the next 5 minutes, I thought she was just like quietly working. And I look over, she's like got her head down like this. I was like, are you okay? She was like, yeah, I just feel really bad that I said that bad word. The word was great. I love BYU. I know this is a wonderful place. Like I could not have picked a better place to work. And that is a way of introducing this little article that I wrote. This is the strongest language that I use. This is as close to cursing as I ever come. And so I want you all to hear me say that learning styles are bullshit. And worse than that, not only are they really, really bad, they probably cause a lot of problems, in particular for minority kids. Because it's really, really hard to teach a kid with a lot of trouble in their background. And it's really, really easy to say, you know, I think that kid's just a kinesthetic learner. Let's lower the bar for that kid. So this one's personal to me. It's also the one that's really funny. Whenever I ask ChatGPT, tell me the 10 things I need to make sure to cover in my ed psych class. It's like number 2 every time. Make sure to differentiate for your visual learners. The common culture has imbibed this so much that I have found it in teacher prep programs sold by the teacher prep companies. That to me is a bit of a problem. Another one, I don't know how many, this is a little bit inside baseball. It's a huge deal in education circles right now. Okay. There are a number of different ways to teach reading. One of the ways to teach reading is called the whole language approach. This is a cartoon making fun of people on my side, the systematic phonics side, where we actually teach people to pronounce each letter. I don't know if you remember them, but I remember the Hooked on Phonics Worked for Me commercials when I was a kid, right? And over here, it's so much easier. Why don't I just show the kid a picture of the table and the word table, and they'll start to figure it out. And as it turns out, it works for about 50% of kids. And the other 50% are left behind. And you can guess which kids typically. This is sensitive to me because I'm pretty sure that my daughter, my little 6-year-old, has some dyslexia stuff going on. And so I feel really, really strongly about this and about like systematic phonics. And I'm a little bit frustrated because I hear my wife in the background, she's an audiologist and she's doing some training for her job. And I hear her say, I just found out, this is really exciting. We can now do an implant, sorry, what are they called? The cochlear implant. We can now do one unilaterally. So we can do one on one side. Doesn't just have to be 2. It used to be that you could only do 2. It's like, that's really cool. That's super exciting. She was like, yeah, that's really fun. I said, so what if you just like done it on your own in the past? She was like, so that's how you lose your license. That's how you get sued. Why did you ask me that? I was like, because in education, that's exactly what we do all the time. We do what we think feels best. And that to me is criminal. We don't, I love this one. We might have time. We'll see what we can come back to. Okay, let's do just a little bit of AI. I call this slide demon hands. You'll forgive me, it's really gross. This is what happens when in the early days you asked AI to come up with an ASL explanation chart. But that's not actually the reason for skepticism. The reason for skepticism is that you didn't see it before. Look closer. So,
Whoa.
you can't have that many fingers, guys, count them. And that's the same picture. But it blends in so well that you don't pay attention. This one's fun. This one's called, do you remember Duck Hunt? Well, AI doesn't. That's what they got when they asked AI to generate images referring to Duck Hunt, the Nintendo video games from what, the 80s, 90s? I'm a little worried about the girl with a cigarette. Awkward. Another reason why I think it's a 21st century skill. This is a real New York Times article. It's fabulous. I share it in a lot of my classes. I'm happy to give you the link, by the way, because this is not my material and I want to say that out loud. One of the two of these is from a Russian bot organization that's trying to do an influence campaign, and the other one is from just a legitimately like very new agey, kind of hippy dippy, if I can say it that way, Facebook group. Now, you might actually be able to guess which one's which. But when I have students go through and have to guess all 6 of them in a row, because there's 6 different pairs in the New York Times article, there is maybe 1 or 2 students who is getting every single one of them right. And at the end, here's my favorite part. They clap themselves on the back like, yeah, I've always felt like I was really good at these. And I was like, homeboy, the way this works is if one of you out of the entire class got all 6 right, that's about equal to chance. That wasn't because you're bright. It's because in every class of 40 people, somebody's going to get every one of them right. It's not because you're a genius. And yet, as soon as we get all of them right, we go, oh yeah, I've always been very good at, knowing you better. Happy to share that with you if you'd like. Why does skepticism get a bad name? I think there are a few reasons, and I think they're really important to understanding why we kind of move away from skepticism, given how practically useful it is, how pedagogically useful it is, how useful it is in the marketplace. Why is it that we shifted away from this? And I think I have kind of 3 basic ideas. Number 1 is what I call the forced dichotomy. You hear this all the time, right? You hear this all the time when people talk about it. In fact, when I looked up the word skepticism the other day, I found that a skeptic literally refers to somebody who is no longer Christian and is an atheist. And that's one working definition because that's how it's been used in the past. Now, there's nothing wrong if that's how we decide to use the word. That's not how I'm using it today, okay? But I just want to show you how silly the forced dichotomy is just for a quick second, okay? If you see this, I always want you to remember, do you choose faith or skepticism is just as valid a question as do you choose not being racist or not kicking puppies? That's how forced dichotomies work. They are there to make you look or feel stupid or to manipulate you in some way. And by the way, the really easy way to fix this is just to add another axis. And now we've got something really cool to talk about. Can you think of people who are highly faithful and super gullible? I can. Can you think of people who are super faithful and super skeptical? I can. Henry Eyring's father, Henry Eyring, comes to mind. He's the one that nobody knows about. He's a scientist down at the University of Utah. Really cool guy. Geologist, I think. There are a number of heroes in our tradition that are all about, no, we join these 2 together. Our goal is not to be up here. Our goal is to be up here. That to me is important, and that's something that we can talk about a little bit more. I love this from Richard Williams. Richard Williams says, our rational faculty should not be diminished, shut off, or held back in any way in order to maintain spiritual knowledge or testimony. We have put all of our chips as a church and as a gospel in the pile of, you can never go wrong by seeking truth if you are genuine in your pursuit of truth. Here's number 2. Let's do a little bit of brand differentiation, because sometimes when we talk about skeptics, we're talking about the academic skeptics. These people were funny. They believe, so this is like Descartes. I'm a big fan. I like Descartes. It's a worthy thing to challenge what we think we know. I think it went a little bit too far with the like, I don't know anything. I think, therefore I am. That was fun. Okay, fine, whatever. But let's talk about Pyrrho. There's a legend. Pyrrho was the guy in ancient Greece who walked around saying, we know nothing, except that we know nothing. This is the only thing we know. And one of his friends challenged him on it and said, really? So do you know if it feels good to get run over by a wagon? And he goes, no, we can't know that. He goes, okay, so you have to act in conformity with that. He says, yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm just gonna walk in front of wagons. And for the rest of his life, the only reason he survived is because his friends would guide him out of dangerous path. I think that's telling. And I think that academic skepticism, this idea of there is no truth, we cannot ever know anything, is one philosophy you might be skeptical of. I forgot to give this one a little bit of crap. We all know this guy, right? We know the academic skeptic. Now, in ancient times, it was a guy saying, we cannot know anything. There's actually something to that I think is actually kind of valuable. We can talk about functional truth later. But you see this guy all the time online. And I think it's actually a really, really easy trap to fall into. You probably also occasionally see this guy in Sunday school. The guy who's raising his hand and going, well, no, that's a faith promoting rumor. No, that's not actually what that scripture means. They have nothing valid or valuable to add to the conversation that uplifts faith, increases morality, makes people better, but they are very willing to, for show, brag about something that they know, show off, shoot down other people's ideas. So one of the first things that I want to say, by the way, this is a meme, okay? I'm not making fun of anybody in here, okay? This is just so we're clear. One of the first things that I want to say is I am defining skeptic in the same way that Miguel de Unamuno does. I probably butchered that name, but I really like this. Skeptic does not mean him who doubts, but him who investigates or researches, as opposed to him who asserts and then thinks that he has found. Ed Gant is a PhD at BYU, and I love this. For Christians, thinking is part of believing. That resonates with me, that's deep. By the way, I should know this. The Greek word skepsis means investigation. Literally, a skeptic is an inquirer. Oh, this is great. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm just going to tell you this. One way you can tell which kind of skeptic they are. Oh, did I? Hold on. I skipped this quote. It's like the best quote. It's the whole point of the slide, and I totally skipped over it. Nietzsche talked about the people who worship the question mark itself as though it were their God. Are you using skepticism and inquiry as a tool to get at truth? Or do you worship at the altar of the question mark? Those two are fundamentally different in my mind. Jordan Peterson, for all of his many flaws, said something here that I find quite compelling. One of the ways that you can tell if somebody is the right kind of skeptic is, do they actually stand for something? Ever. Because it's really, really easy to sit and shoot down other people's ideas. At some point, you have to stand up and say, here's mine. Social media has made this really bad, by the way. It's really easy to give a sick burn and get 10 minutes of fame. It's actually a lot harder to be a decent person and to take stands that could occasionally be wrong and just try your very best. This is one of my other favorites. I call this the implied directionality problem. The best way that I can explain this to you is with a series of pictures of interactions between me and my dear friend ChatGPT. Fill in the blank, ChatGPT. We should be skeptical of, drum roll, everything. Good answer. Yeah, okay, yeah, I can get on board. Nice and egalitarian. And I said, all right, let's test your hypothesis. Here's a set of things, and you tell me if we should be skeptical of all of them. Here's my set. Authority, religion, political identitarianism, and feminism. And ChatGPT immediately said, yes, yes, yes. Whoa, 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 hold on. What do you mean? Like, let's complicate. Now, by the way, I have no argument against feminism. That's not my point. My point is that ChatGPT got real nervous all of a sudden when I brought up, should we be skeptical of feminism? When I say be skeptical, you in your brains have associated that, for cultural reasons, I'm not blaming you, with be skeptical of authority, be skeptical of tradition, be skeptical of religion. Nobody ever says be skeptical of college professors. Maybe they ought to. I mean, I do, right? You've heard that in my class. There's an implied direction when we say be skeptical that is always against a lot of really good things. And so like I made a little list yesterday. I'm sure this isn't perfect. But like as I think about this, yeah, like this is stuff you should be skeptical of. And that stuff where it's like, oh, how dare you? The other day I was talking to a student, I was like, well, is democracy good? And they're like, oh, did you just ask if democracy was good? I said, well, yeah, I'm just being skeptical. And they were like, I can't believe you asked that. I don't think that's wrong to ask that. I'm not trying to take away the franchise. I just want to be really clear. I think you need to think through questions. And it's actually really interesting and really enjoyable and very challenging, very hard. By the way, one that I'm seeing right now in schools, everywhere. The working assumption in schools is we should discipline as little as possible. If you teach well enough, the kids will act right. Now, I am firmly in the camp of you engage students with great lessons, you build relationships, you do everything you can. A teacher like that can transform a classroom and a school. I also think that transformational teachers are harder and harder to find, and the kind of behaviors we're seeing are more and more extreme. That's my view. And I don't think you can just say, be engaging, build relationships anymore. It's got to be something a little bit deeper than that. That's not me. Let me see how many questions have come in really quickly, because I want to see if I can keep ranting at you. Or if there's, oh, we've got 5. That's actually pretty good. Really good. Okay, so we have a few, and as sometimes happens, you all walked into my trap. So of the 5 questions, one was a play question just to make sure the thing was working, and the other 4 asked the same thing. So of what am I skeptical? And I wrote this slide, and then I was like, yeah, but I really need another one. And I was like, shoot, crap. Okay, I need another one. And I just kept going, and I got to about 15 or 17 of these. I'm going to pick and choose a few favorites, just really quick. Okay. The radical positivists are the people who believed that nothing should be viewed scientifically unless it can be measured in a lab. I think that's probably a bit of a simplification. It's probably a little bit of a straw man. But I think that's a fair way to simplify it for folks who maybe have never heard of radical positivism before. These are the people who are basically saying the only thing that matters is data. On the opposite end, you've got the radical constructivists who are saying, no, data doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is your actual lived experience. I don't know how to tell them that I think both are just way out there. And neither one of those resonates with me, and actually lead to some really big problems right now on college campuses. I don't think here, but in some other places I've seen, there's a lot of talk about, do we even know what is true? Is there even such a thing as truth? Can we even get truth? Is truth just structured for power? The bomb worked. There's a story behind that. Let me explain. This is great. A friend of mine, not a friend of mine, a professor of mine. Bill Dibble. Bill Dibble was great. He was at BYU, he was a science professor. He was like half professor and half just totally mad scientist. He kind of like muttered to himself as he was setting up the experiment. It was great. It was awesome, right? And he's setting up this experiment, and then he says the thing that we always say in science class. He said, now, for the purpose of this experiment, we're just going to ignore friction. Okay, so just ignore friction. And he's going back to it. And one of the students, I saw him raise his hand. I was like, oh, this is going to be good. Because I knew the student. I knew how he thought. And he thinks kind of like I think. And he's like, Professor. I mean, you can feel the Draco Malfoy, right? Professor. And the professor goes, yeah. We're always making all of these assumptions. What's even the point of science if we have to always make all of these assumptions? I was like, oh, you went there. And I leaned forward, went like this with my, I mean, outwardly, I was like, but like inwardly, I was so excited. The professor looked at him, and I was excited because I thought that he was going to be like, that's a really good question, John. And instead, he looked at him like he was a total idiot. He looked at him like he was deaf. He said, you do realize that the bomb worked, right? The bomb refers to a very specific bomb. The atomic bomb. So one of the things I would push you on, don't become Pyrrho. Don't become the person that's running around going, can we even find truth? Yes, the bomb worked. My son deserves a good dad. You all deserve decent teachers. The world can be made better. There are things that we actually do know. We really do. And that's a part of the skepticism too. Diogenes, we're going to talk about him in a minute. We'll come back. Okay, we just have to, I can't. Here are a few of my own personal ones. I am sometimes worried that there's a culture that sometimes creeps in where we feel like in order to be kind, we have to apologize. There is such a thing as pride. There is such a thing as arrogance. I want to give my vote against culture of soft defeatism. Jesus is not just the risen Lord, but the victorious Lord. I think this is a really important thing about optimism. and about victory, and about the way we view our lives. And this goes really deep. And it's something that I want to really push as hard. By the way, every piece of psychology evidence I know agrees with me on this. That our lives and the world will be better when we view it through the lens of Jesus is triumphant. Our lives can be good and beautiful. I love the song, How Will They Know? It's by, it's in the children's hymn book. How will they know that life is good with blessings on the chair? How will they know unless we teach them so? Happiness researcher Arthur Brooks says one of the best things you can do for your kids is teach them not to fear the world. Diogenes. I am skeptical of cynicism. Diogenes was the cynic. He was the leader of one of the schools of cynicism in ancient Greece. He lived in a jar. That's what people said. And none of us really know what that means. So that's like what all the paintings look like. And we're not sure if it was like a literal jar, if he just drank too much, or like it's very complicated, right? But Diogenes was like, I am wise because I act like a dog. I eat where I want and I do everything wherever I want to. And he sure did. Okay. And he was very proud of how he was freed of all of these social norms and nobody could hold him back and he could do whatever he wanted to. And so, for example, he went to the theater and hoot at the theater in public. And that is not the least of his crimes. And then brags to everybody about how enlightened he was. I don't think that cynicism is the issue. The issue is that people don't like being told that there are rules and norms, and that norms are good. Let me give it to you in a sense that you might recognize. In teaching, we talk about high expectations. High expectations are the magic that helps kids more than anything else. Right? Like this is my very, very firm belief. Kids need high expectations. Antinomianism is when you resent high expectations, when you feel like somebody's imposing on you for setting them. When a kid looks at you and says, oh, why are you always trying to tell me what to do? Because I love you enough to tell you what to do. Because when you're about to touch the red hot plate, or when you're about to sit there and twiddle your thumbs all the way through math practice, that's not something I'm willing to allow you to do. This is from 1,000 different disguises coming into our society from every possible aspect. And this is one I am skeptical of and would push against as with everything that I have. Determinism was one that I forgot to put up here. Determinism is just the opposite of free will. Elder Christofferson gave a great talk actually at BYU for, what do you call them, graduation. And he asked Latter-day Saints to stand up for free will and to make arguments and to discuss this because more and more people are starting to say this. Fascinating thing. I could talk your ears off all about that. I'm currently studying this. Okay, skeptics, take a look. Oh, need to wrap up. How did I fool you? Huh?
There was a W.
Thank
Did you see it?
you.
Think you can't be fooled? Still not skeptical enough. All right, let's keep going. I love this. My friend Dan Ellsworth put this. So I got to get meta for a minute. You need to be skeptical of skeptics. My friend was talking about how there's a thing called deconstructing where you like really interrogate an idea. It's actually really good to be able to do. Okay, it's deeper than that, but that's a simplification. Okay, and he said it's really great because you see people go through this process and like, oh, I can question, I can doubt, I can deconstruct everything. I can like deconstruct things that are sad on. I have seen people deconstruct their way out of marriage, their way out of patriotism, their way out of living a basically put together life. I don't have any problem with very carefully choosing to deconstruct something for at one time or another. That can be holy work. But we need to be careful. Are we worshiping the question mark or are we trying to get to God? By the way, now that I've told you about all of your flaws and faults, I should probably tell you that I'm considering taking out a lot of that for next semester's ed psych class that I teach. Because as it turns out, we're actually not that gullible. And we're not that flawed. It's just that it sells really good books. Hugo Mercier wrote the book Not Born Yesterday. It's all about gullibility. And he has a surprising take. He said, listen, I've studied it. People just aren't that gullible. And yes, you have a blind spot. But the reason you never noticed it before is because you never noticed it before. Because you can see just fine with a blind spot. Because your brain makes up the difference. Yes, we have cognitive biases. There's something useful about finding those, spotting them, figuring out what you can do with them. That is good work. But we might be overemphasizing the degree to which these are actually important. Okay, apparently we have a lot of responses. I guess I can end with two last thoughts. Ignorance is the wrong word. Let's change that to uncertainty real quick. In economics, there's this thing that people do that always makes me chuckle. And that's when some new econ grad student says, I'm going to go study poverty. Poverty, my friends, is the natural state. Poverty is everywhere. It is very easy to study poverty. People that I love the most in economics, the people like Adam Smith, they wanted to study wealth. They wanted to figure out what happens when we get things right. A guy stood up in testimony meeting recently, not my word, and he said, I have a testimony of all the things I don't know. And then he bore his testimony about all the things he didn't know. Now, kudos for courage. I will happily grant him that. And I probably would not make fun of him. If I was his bishop, I would say, hey, thank you for telling your story as best you know. But I want to make sure that you all hear my view, since I don't feel like I should tell him. Uncertainty is the natural state. Standing up and telling everybody that you don't know things. Yeah, we know. That's life. It's hard and we don't know things, and we all go around trying to figure things out. The reason we have testimony meeting, it's like a little celebration of truth. It's a little ritual that we have all together where we say, truth is great, and we have a little bit, and it's really exciting. I think that's worth thinking about. One last thought. You should be skeptical of Babylon. Professor Williams again notes that Elder Maxwell and President Oakes have pointed out that a notable aspect of the apostasy was the incorporation into the doctrine of the church ideas and philosophies prevalent in that day, largely Greek in origin. Since religion went significantly wrong in large part because of those ideas and presuppositions, we Latter-day Saints ought to be as wary of accepting them in our academic disciplines and social institutions as we are in our religion. We need to be careful that we don't so much put ourselves above the world or Babylon that we view other people outside of our faith as enemies. I think there's some wisdom in that. But there is a reason why we are always told to be wary of Babylon and the world and all of those things. At our contemporary culture, let me put it this way. When students come into my office and say, I got some testimony stuff, can I talk to you? I'm like, yeah, that's fine. I'm not your bishop, but yeah, I'll talk you through anything that I can. Rarely is it the case that they are asking me questions of a testimony nature. Typically, they are asking me questions of a nature of culture and how current culture clashes with the church. And what we tend to do is say, well, we don't want to talk about culture in our classes, because if we do that, that's us taking a stand, and that can be uncomfortable. I think that's dumb. I think our culture is dumb. Not all of it. Some of it's great. But if we can't have conversations about being skeptical about our current culture and what's going on with that, then we're going to have a hard time. We're not giving our students tools. I think that's a point worth making. I'll close with a quick story. You probably know it. I always love reading in the scriptures when Satan is angry, I'm happy. I wake up every morning and I pray that I can please Heavenly Father. But if I make the wrong people, if I make the right people mad, that's almost as good. Right? That feels a little bit close. And there's this one story that I've always really liked, where Satan rages. There's two really good people not seem to believe what's being taught. You'll need the courage and humility to believe the right things. You will also at times need to have the courage and the humility to not believe the right things. I share that with the name of Jesus Christ. Amen. Okay, I'm gonna look at questions. We have like 6-7 minutes for 14 questions. I've done more than that after class. I'm sure we can handle it. Let's see. Okay, how can you train your brain to be skeptical? That's a fabulous question. The short answer is engage in activities that make you skeptical. I think if you have a good teacher, they should not be trying to add facts into your head. They should be trying to rewire your brain. My class every week, we read an academic paper and I say, how strong is this paper? And the whole reason for that is it's literally a skills training and how skeptical are you, right? By the way, some of them sound really impressive and they are not. And when I show, for example, some of them have, I see Professor Saunders in the back of the room, some of them have phenomenal p-values and excellent, what are they called? Cohen's d. But when you actually look at what they're measuring, it's a bogus statistic. Like it's a real statistic, but like what they're measuring just doesn't matter. I saw one that was pretty entertaining. I like social emotional learning, just to be clear. But social emotional learning, when you teach kids social emotional learning, they can answer the quiz at the end of the chapter on social emotional learning at a higher rate. Okay, but the reason we teach social emotional learning is so the kids become better people. Nobody cares about like, do you know what it means to be nice to people? Like, this is a stupid question. We have to, that's one way that you can do it. Engage in activities that make you more skeptical. If you were going to use AI to fool someone, what would you do?
Take his class.
That's a fair answer. I will tell you my honest thought. When I was, have any of you read Ender's Game? You remember Locke and Demosthenes?
Yeah.
So the kids get on and pretend that they are adults, and they end up taking over the world. It's a very spoiler warning. Oops, sorry. It's really cool. I was a kid and I was like, I'm gonna do that. And the spirit was like, no, the most counterculture thing you can do in a world where everyone's fake is to just be a decent real person and you use your real name. So I don't know how I use AI, but people sometimes come to me and they're like, are you faking? Because you seem like you try really hard to be nice. I was like, yeah, I do try to be nice on social media. Because I follow Jesus and I think it's really important. And I just try to be really authentic, and that's the best that I know how to do. Let's see, next question. How can I build disagreeableness? On the Big Five test, I scored a 5 out of 100. Oh, that's fantastic. Just so that I'm clear, I should, there's a fair amount of theater and theatricality in what I did today. I don't think that what it means is go be disagreeable and you'll be a phenomenal teacher, okay? I do think that what's interesting is the cultural gap where we say they should be loving, they should be kind. Yes, they need to be all of those things, but we don't tend to teach what I would call the toughness. I don't think it's disagreeable. I think it's assertiveness. I think it's the ability to know where you stand on things, and I think that's a really important thing. But the answer is life will teach you these things if you let it. So go and substitute teach and get out in front of kids. You will learn very quickly that if mercy is all you do, mercy will not last for long. Like justice cannot rob mercy and mercy cannot rob justice. You will learn very quickly that a decent classroom management program means that kids are happier and feel safe and they know that you're the authority figure, and that's a good thing. So I think you can build those skills. By the way, I'll say this in my opinion. I think a lot of college students would benefit from being yelled at by a manager. Not because I want you to get yelled at by a manager, not because it's good for you, but all of a sudden you go, that was awful. I didn't deserve that. That was really rude. Oh wait, I'm still here. Everything was fine. There's something about that changes you and you just get like more mature and you figure some things out. Yeah.
As your friend, I wanted to answer that question. Every time Brother Pacini has disagreed with me, I've known it comes from a place of integrity. And so I know that he believes what he's disagreeing with, and he is trying to disagree with me because he cares.
I should say that's true for you. When I disagree with Mark Nance, that's just for funsies. You're completely right. And I think when people know that you are doing it out of integrity or out of love, or, and this is true, part of me just likes to debate, likes to discuss, likes to do those things. But I hope that our friendship is never, ever, ever in question. I think that's really, really important. Let's see what other questions we have here. If you are not wired for truth, how do you explain the light of Christ? Two answers to that. I actually think we're pretty fundamentally good. We're not completely fundamentally good. I would liken this in the same way that Mosiah does, or I should say King Benjamin does. The natural man is an enemy to God unless he submits to the Holy Spirit and does what he is told. And so we can become better people. By the way, I should have said this earlier, but like Little Red Riding Hood is all about skepticism. We realize that, right? Like I teach in my class object permanence. Do you guys know what object permanence is? What's the game we play with little kids that teaches them object permanence? Peekaboo. That's why it's there. It's not just a fun game. Like it teaches them, they think. Why do we teach kids Little Red Riding Hood? Because some wolves will eat you. And that is a good life lesson. And if you go through life trusting every single person, by the way, some of you know somebody like this. They trust every single person. They give away money to people and they do all of it. That is not a good life to live. You will get burned over and over again. Other people are so closed and so tight and never trust anybody, and they are also not happy and they don't have friends. There is an in-between, and there's a balance you can walk where you can do both of those pretty well. I've learned these last couple of months how much energy I gained from social interactions and parties and how much I enjoy them. Personality tests growing up trained me to think I was introverted. Haha, so I believed it and missed out on all kinds of meaningful opportunities. Yes! Oh, the number of people who are like, it's my destiny. No, it's wrong. It's a self-survey. It's a thing you wrote about yourself. Stop it. It's like the second grade essay that you wrote about yourself. You're like, well, that's who I am now. Nobody would say that. Okay? Personality is complicated. By the way, it's interesting because most people's personalities don't change. But I don't think that's because like we don't talk about it in a way where we could change. Actually, I shouldn't say that. On average, most people do change. As it turns out, older people get really happy. They're just chill and they become more conscientious and they relax a little bit and they enjoy life. So we have things to look forward to. That's really exciting to them. Personalities do change on average, but they change in fairly predictable ways. I'm not convinced that it's your destiny. So that's just my opinion. How can you be skeptical and believe in miracles? I'm going to answer in 3 ways. Number 1, you can be skeptical about miracles when you've been equally skeptical of all of the other things. And I'm going to start with, a friend of mine asked me, he said, so you're a religious man, but you're also a scientist. I said, well, scientist is strong. I'm in education, but I'll try. And he said, how do you make sense of angels and plates or a man who comes back from the dead? And I said, well, if I gave you perfect evidence, would you believe? He said, okay, I'll play your game. Yeah, give me perfect evidence. I said, okay. Even a little bit of alcohol is bad for you. You're gonna give it up? So, well, no, because I've heard that a little bit is good for you. I said, yeah, I know too. But 5 years ago, they did a study, and the reason why, and I gave him all the evidence, he said, yeah, no, I don't think I'm gonna give it up. I said, so real intent is part of the thing. Real intent, I would argue, is the starting point of faith. So you can be skeptical of miracles, that's fine. A scientific brain is gonna say, I can't make sense of that. I'm good with that. You have to start by being skeptical of everything. Because as it turns out, the best I've got is some p-values and some meta-analysis, and that's not perfect either. And that's as close as I get scientifically. And I'm still weighing the evidence. Number 2, there are some things that I can't explain. How a man came back from the dead is one of them. But William James was a pragmatist. He said sometimes truth is useful, but usefulness is also a form of truth. Sometimes there's something about us that changes us and makes us better, and that's not worth dismissing. Number 3, last but not least, because I've lived some. Thank you all so much for coming. I hope it was good.
Thank you so much for coming. We appreciate Embassy for presenting today. Thank you so much.
I wonder. But even if I saw
haven't seen it. I see it. Yeah, literally. Every single day.
Wonderful. Okay, so those basically it's like that's what I did.
I'm sure you have the
Well, that's
today I'm doing.
Oh,
I guess I can put you out.
and I was not invited.
I was here to take out 3 or 4. I know. Actually, I feel like
Oh, there is.
I want to talk to the Delta we have. Hey, brother, how hard would it be? to make psychology.
Like, my phone is. No, I think I don't ready.
So. Okay, so we'll wrap. Yeah. Anything else I can start wrapping up? Let's close out. Sorry.
Yeah.